genuinely cannot see right now. Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Hazel Jane and I paint crap on my face. In case you hadn't guessed from the thumbnail in the beginning of this video, it's Halloween season. I had to say that really quietly because it's like 10 o'clock at night. Yes, we are finally into spooky season, my favourite time of the year, in case you couldn't tell. I wanted to kick off Halloween this year by doing a look that has a fairly special place in my heart. I actually originally did this look back in like 2017 maybe? I found this makeup look done by the French artist Marion Cameleon. I don't know how to pronounce her last name and I'm really sorry if I butchered it. But I absolutely fell in love with it. I didn't really wear makeup at the time or do anything like that, but I wanted to push myself for actual Halloween, so I attempted the look. And then a few years later in 2020 during lockdown when I was doing social media makeup, I redid the look. So it kind of felt fitting that I redo it for a third time. However, with the addition of my little friend. Without much further ado, we'll jump into the tutorial and I'm starting off with how I made my little hand friend. So to kick things off, I'm going to show you how I did the little hand illusion. You just loop your hand over, but in order to get the proper effect, you need to replicate the wrist coming up. And in this case, we're using the cardboard from a toilet roll. I cut off a little bit at the bottom so it would fit around my wrist and then placed it where I needed it in order to get the proper effect with my hand over my head. And then cut it down to size. Then taking some liquid latex and toilet paper, I secured the back of it with a bit of masking tape just so it would stay in place, double check the positioning, and then just started layering. Going in with liquid latex first, building it up with really small bits of tissue until I got the shape that I wanted. Then taking the white face paint as well as a little bit of black from my other colour palette and mixed it together to make this kind of dead greyish kind of skin, and then just slapped it all over. As always, I set it with translucent powder to make sure it didn't go anywhere. In this palette, I used a lot of the greys and a few of the green and yellow tones to add a few sort of details and shading to the hand to give it that very dead look. Then going in with a water-activated liner to start adding some of the stitches, mapping out where they go first and then adding the actual stitch details. Over the top of each stitch, I added a teeny tiny white highlight, as you can see here, and then went in with a soft brown colour to layer it and give that 3D effect. And there you go, that's the hand. Moving on to the face, I just used a brow pencil to start mapping out the shape of the brows, and then went in with the Made by Mitchell colour case. I used a very dark grey, and then carved that out with the HMB concealer in 0. I followed a fairly standard makeup routine for this with primer and a foundation that was super matte and really, really pale. But what I wanted to then do was use the same concealer in excessive amounts to lighten up the general area of the face and give a proper pale finish. I didn't just want to use a flat white because I wanted there to still be a bit of depth and some level of colour. I only used a tiny bit of white on the very, very inner corners just to keep a little bit of the brightness. I used 2 different types of setting powder to set the under eyes because there was a lot of product, and again I wanted to give it that very matte feel. I then went in with greys to start doing contour, before going over it with a few cool tone browns. Taking inspiration from her mother, I wanted to give quite a harsh contour, following it up with going down the nose, creating quite a straight effect and just blending everything out and making sure everything looks seamless. For the eyes, as we were doing a bit of a cut crease, I applied a primer just around the outside edges that I was going to be putting in the shadow. Then I started setting it with a grey shadow and blending that out towards the edge. Started adding in darker greys to build up the depth until I finally got to black on the inner corner, but just properly taking my time with it and making sure it was all blended out and smooth. Bringing it a little bit under the waterline and just, again, blending, and then some more blending. Once I was happy with that, I then went in to carve out the crease. Before setting it with white shadow and blending out the outer edge so that it all married together. And taking black on an angled brush just to line along the lash line and again bring back some of the depth that was lost on the outer edge. Taking that same black liner to go underneath the lash line and bringing it slightly lower than the inner corner of the eye and then smoking it out. I then added black to the waterline just to really finish it off. The lips are super basic, just lined with a black liner and then a black liquid lipstick on top. And then finishing off the glam side with mascara and a big old pair of lashes. Now you can leave the look here if you are more on the glam side. It is still a very Halloween appropriate look, and especially if you have your little friend here. But we're going to take it up just another level. I started by taking a water activated liner on a super thin brush and mapping out where I wanted the cross to go. I did this in black initially and used a really light hand before then starting to go over it, diving in with lots of reds and purples to bring out the cut element to it. Start by blending out just a load of deep reds around the edges, then adding more depth to the centre with deeper colours and eventually a black. To create the 3D illusion effect, I use a light brown shadow just to add shading along the outside, leaving a tiny gap around the edge in order to create like a highlight. To emphasise the highlight, I take a teeny tiny brush and a water activated liner in white and add a few details along the edges. Full disclosure, I did go a little bit overboard with these, so it kind of lost some of the effect, so less is definitely more when you're doing this. Yeah, around here is probably where I should have stopped, but I didn't. I went back in with more colour just to try and add a bit more depth and create that 3D effect. And I then went on to try and add a little bit of blood just to give it that proper SFX feel. Unfortunately, the blood did lift a little bit the shadow underneath while I was trying to move it around, which ruined the illusion a little bit, but I then went in underneath the eyes with a load of reds and purples and started draping it down across the cheek. The good thing about this makeup is it's super forgiving, so you can be fairly messy with it. You don't have to have it super blended. The effect is obviously to create that super unhealthy red under eye, which is obviously to do with all the blood vessels under the eye, because you can of course then take a super fine line brush to actually map out some of those blood vessels. It gives a proper possessed feel to it. I use a really light hand when I'm doing these and just kind of let the brush follow its own kind of path rather than trying to map anything out. Blood vessels do not follow straight lines. I then went in with a little bit of red back around the cross to marry it all together. And that right there is the finished look. It's a very versatile look because at its core it's still a very glam makeup, just with those added extra elements. But I hope you enjoyed this little Halloween tutorial. Let me know if this is the kind of thing you want to see more of, and I'll see you next time. Bye!